Okay, this is a lecture that we had for the CSP 100 Intro to Helping Professionals. And this is just to catch folks up who weren't able to make it to our last lecture, but also we'll start off with a conversation about, or just really an update from the syllabus regarding the privilege paper. And so I'll break that down and then also get into the lecture really about setting boundaries in counseling sessions. So let's begin here as I share the screen and go from there. All right. So the privilege paper, although it says it was due on the 3rd, we're going to go with the 10th. And really, you can take a look at those required readings from Canvas and the additional details, review PowerPoint notes and other posted articles related to the subject matter. After completing the reading, answer the following questions in a 3 to 4 page paper. So based on your understanding of the readings and information shared in videos, define privilege, right? That's the first area. So you really should be able to use your textbook, use other readings to define privilege. Then next, identify and discuss at least 3 forms or types of privileges. What privileges do you hold and how might they manifest? So here I'm giving you a range of examples: socioeconomic, gender, age, status, access, education, generational wealth, power dynamics, and particularly like teacher to student or administrator to teacher or supervisor to person who is supervised, mentor to mentee, right? Documented status and language. Also, you need to describe ways in which privilege advantages some groups while disadvantaging others. And well, I really want you to consider that it may not quite be a specific binary of privileged versus unprivileged, right? So you can add nuance and really use critiques and current critiques that are out there regarding the area of privilege. So provide these concrete examples. So why is understanding the concept of privilege critical for helping professionals? Well, you're going to have to answer that in relation to, I would suggest, in the areas of helping professions that you'd like to go into, or the specific area. And these are examples of 3 resources: a textbook, right? The textbook that you have from Corey and Corey, a peer-reviewed article, and/or news story. If you have more than one peer-reviewed article, that's fine, but I want you to make sure that it's in line with what the textbook has been talking about in relation to privilege. So I mentioned to some folks, Tim Wise has some great videos, but also articles and blogs and books in relation to privilege. He began talking about it in the larger media context back in the 2010s, but there's many other people who are writing about it. I think of Robin DiAngelo, and particularly with the American Psychological Association and several others. What I like about APA is they offer some strong critiques. So you may want to get into that. Okay. If you have any more questions, feel free to email me regarding the privilege paper. That said, let's get into our main portion of the lecture. So managing boundary issues. Once again, that's managing boundary issues. And that's from chapter 9 from our Corey and Corey text. So multiple relationships and the code of ethics, right? So most code of ethics caution against forming dual or multiple relationships with clients. When multiple relationships harm clients and have significant potential to harm or exploit clients, they are unethical. We talked about the difference between ethics and law, right? But I'm focusing in on these 2 pieces, right? Harm and exploitation. And those are 2 key themes I think are extremely important to be wary of when it comes to boundaries and relationships with clients: harm and exploitation. So boundary crossing versus violations, right? So I might run into somebody around the way, and it may be a departure from standard practice that could potentially benefit the client. I may say, hey, man, it's good to see you out and about, especially if they've been locked in and haven't been out and about. But that may be the end of it. it has a potential benefit, but it can also go wrong in that I might be violating their confidentiality. So it's good to have clearly understood relationship boundaries before something like that happens, and to really talk about it. But a violation could be a serious breach that causes harm to the client, such as sharing confidential information with somebody you shouldn't be sharing it with. We'll talk about more kind of breaches and serious boundary violations as well. But when you're managing multiple relationships, and particularly with the clients or people that you're serving, set healthy boundaries from the outset. Start at the beginning to state what the relationship is about, and involve the client in setting the boundaries in the relationship, right? You want to secure informed consent, seek consultation, and document and monitor your practices. So this is an ethical thing, but it's also a piece about what's most effective. So if you're using a lot of self-disclosure and you're finding that your clients are not able to reach their goals or really not able to individuate and handle their own problems themselves. Now I'll pause here and kind of break that down. So let's say you're in a working relationship. You start off with the initial assessment and you have a better idea of what to work on. Now you're working on goals and you're working on particular skills, right? If one of those things has to do with your self-disclosure and you're self-disclosing too much, and the client isn't able to make the leap to doing their own thing and generalizing those skills to their own life, it may be because you're doing too much self-disclosure. So you want to monitor your own practices to make sure that they are effective, that you are helping your clients meet their treatment outcomes, meet their goals. You want to discuss the potential benefits and risks with the client, particularly if you're talking about interacting on social media, interacting in other spaces, and set healthy boundaries from the outset, right? About a professional relationship, I think is extremely important, and you want to refer when necessary. So the American Counseling Association, and I added and did some extra readings, taking a look at the American Psychological Association. They really discuss boundaries well. And we're going to stay here for a little bit. I'm even going to show you a couple of websites about issues in boundaries in social media. But let's take a look at the ACA. So they emphasize the need for counselors to develop, and I would say add that they need to follow the social media policy. I think at the time the textbook was written, there were still a lot of institutions that were developing their policy. Now, many have developed that policy. And if you are working at an institution, I think it's important for you to be able to provide clarity regarding that process and regarding the policy. And so, you know, when you are within policy and outside of policy. So the informed consent process should be clear and should clarify those boundaries. Any friend requests, I'm talking like social media, how do you respond to that? It would be good to have a policy for that. It's also good to limit what's posted, and particularly about your clients, but also about your overall job. Keep updated settings, especially in regards to privacy. So the American Psychological Association also has some other issues to consider with boundaries in social media. Do not discuss anything related to a client's treatment in a status update. That makes general sense to me, coming from practicing before social media. But for some folks, they feel they're kind of open, or they may be in certain forms and not remembering that people can screenshot those issues, or sometimes people have access and ways to hack and follow you to find out what you're up to. So do not post quotes from clients or complain about your work. And I would kind of split those in two. And I see one, you know, if you're talking about your clients and complaining about your clients, that's a huge problem. But the other is complaining about your work overall. And there may be issues, but that erodes the confidence that your client may have in your workplace. So be clear also about your purpose when interacting with clients. So because inviting clients to your personal page can also be perceived as inviting them into your personal life. So I think it's important to have a professional page and a family or very personal page where, you know, people are not able to cross those boundaries. I would say consider a Facebook group as opposed to friending your clients and allowing them to have access to the group if you're interested in sharing information on social media. But um, there isn't a hard set rule, and we're still kind of in this new era of connecting with people digitally, especially after the shutdown. And we're finding even more ways in which and how it's important to do that. But again, clarifying what the relationship is about and keeping that clarification going is important. All right. So shifting gears quite a bit here, talking about sexual attraction to clients and also clients' attraction to you. So if you are finding yourself attracted to a client, you've got to immediately acknowledge those honest feelings to yourself and explore the reasons for the attraction. Don't act on those feelings, and monitor boundaries by setting clear limits and maintaining professional decorum, right? Professional ethics, professional practices, starting and ending on time, staying focused in on the task in relation to the client's overall welfare and well-being, not having a selfish back and forth. And I mean selfish in a very general way, but then also it does become selfish more in a specific way in relation to if you're constantly bringing up your issues, right? Definitely talk with a colleague and or a supervisor and seek professional counseling if necessary, so you can explore the reasons for those attractions, but maybe also deal with some of those things. Again, consistently clarify the boundaries of the relationship. Um, and sexual relations with current clients, there are definite consequences for therapists, right? And they may be sued or convicted of a felony. They may have their personal license revoked. They may be expelled from a professional organization. And I've seen all of these happen to people, not all at one time, but I've seen some people being sued. I've seen some convicted of felony. I've seen people have their license either suspended while things are being reviewed, and I've seen people expelled from professional organizations. Insurance coverage. Most people pay in between $500 to $1,000 a year for professional liability insurance. And if that person steps outside of the policy, and having sex with clients is an ethical breach outside of policy, they will definitely lose their $1 million to $2 million insurance coverage, and they may have to pay their own lawyer's fees as well, and likely be terminated from a job and required to undergo therapy. And if they committed that felony, they may be required to undergo therapy in school, or excuse me, in jail or prison, even worse. And now the emotional harm, right? The long-term effects. Now, here's one thing that I really want you to pay attention to this, because you may end up with a client, and I hope no one does, but it may happen that you're ending up with a client who's gone through this, right? Where somebody really violated their trust. So the harmful consequences, this person may experience reactions similar to those of a survivor of incest or rape. They may feel angry and resentful for being exploited and abandoned. And they may generally feel stuck with unresolved problems and feelings related to the traumatic experience. So not only, right, by having this relationship with the client was the person unethical and selfish, but they also provoked a significant amount of pain and may even make it difficult for the person who they did this to be able to go to a therapist after this awful thing that's happened. Man, I just don't understand how anyone would do that, but it does happen. And that's why we have these codes of ethics, and we're reminded of these responsibilities. So now someone may say, well, I'm not with that person anymore. It's been 10 years and or even longer, but we should still be cautioned against forming romantic relationships with former clients for a specified period, right? And each state, each municipality may have, and each institution may have a period of specified time, right? I think 7 to 10 years, but at minimum, right? But maybe even 20 years. But overall, some relationships may be unethical or unprofessional after a specified time. If you were the child's therapist and now this child is an adult, even 20 years later, no, it may never be appropriate, right? And as we wrap up here in this last piece, it's the helper's responsibility to ensure that relationships with former clients do not result in exploitation or harm. And a sexual relationship is exploitation and can definitely lead to harm, as we were just looking at. The helper is advised to consult with a colleague or seek therapy before entering a sexual relationship with a former client. Yeah, I would even just say, if you're even having those thoughts about a former client, that's a good time to go have a therapy session and really talk through that again and figure out what is going on there. Because it's important that you maintain your professionalism. And if you're a part of the helping community, we want to keep you in the helping community and not have to be expelled from that group. Right. I hope that information is helpful and you're able to at least generate some questions for yourself. And you can send me some questions that you may have. Till next time, hopefully we can see you in class. Have a great evening. Bye.